Hello everyone, welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. In this one, we'll be taking a look at an updated Riptide CC deck list since, hey, even though he didn't get the Armory deck, it really feels like he got the Armory deck because pretty much every card in the list that's actually good feels like you could consider it inside of Riptide. So, I mean, hey, with that, let's just start talking about it. Riptide is a hero that we've covered a lot on this channel, either it be because of Blitz. I feel like it's a pretty big coincidence how much we've talked about Riptide, considering I don't even play the guy that much. A lot of people at in my local area play a lot of Riptide, so I have a lot of practice against it, but it's never really my first choice to play a game with. I'd either rather play a slower, more controlling deck, something like Icelander when she existed, or like Enigma, or I'd rather just play an aggressive deck since I mean, we don't really have an Icelander right now. Hopefully we do next set, but like a more aggressive deck. And Riptide was always a deck that had both of those playstyles available. He had a pretty good trap-based plan, which it seems like they keep printing cards for. It's gotta work next set, guys. Or you have a very aggressive plan with Riptide's first ability, allowing him to load his arrows without needing to actually activate his bow, which is incredibly strong. And with the card they showed for next set for Ranger, that again I think is pretty strong, Riptide is going to be on the more aggressive plan for a while thanks to the additions from the Azalea Armory deck, a lot of which we have inside of this deck list that we will be talking about. Now there are a lot of ways you can play Riptide. I think Dreadbore is the best bow. Just the +1 damage feels super strong. We do have a large amount of aim counter synergies in this deck, but it's never our main consideration. We have other cards that can help assist with that, so we really don't need Riptide's other bow. And Dreadbore allows us to just get some extra arrows into play and pump them up and make sure that they're a little more evasive. It makes the reacts harder to actually play since they have to be in the opponent's arsenal. And Barbed Castaway is a decent option because you can flip the arrow face up, which will turn on your New Horizon, which is the headpiece we are on for this deck. But I felt like the +1 and then just the ability for all of your arrows not to be able to have D-Reacts played from hand are just incredibly strong. For the helmet, we have New Horizon. There are a lot of times where this card's pretty good. If there's ever a situation where you need to double pump an arrow and then get something else into your arsenal, New Horizon's pretty good for that. Of course, you can't flip something straight up, but for instance, say you activate Dreadbore, you load your arrow, say we're loading like, I don't know, a bolt and shot, but you want your first arrow to be having all your pumps, but you still need to arsenal something. Say you need to arsenal a card for like, I don't know, to gain a resource off your trench, and you just want to put it to the bottom without showing anything, or you know, you want to load an arrow for your line it up because this only works on face down arrows. You'll need that second arsenal slot. So you do want the New Horizon for a lot of situations. You could play the new helmet, and I don't think you're going to play Skullbone Crosstrap, or is that what it's called? That and Heart and Crosstrap are very similar in name. I believe it's that. Skullbone Crosstrap. The Azalea helmet. New Horizon is just generally better. If you want, you could play Balance, and if you want, you could play Crown, but I think New Horizon is just generally good and gives you some added utility some of the time. As well as if you get a card face up in Arsenal. You can have a face down card in Arsenal to trench later. It just makes the deck feel a little better. For chest, we have Trench. The new chest is not very good when compared to Trench. I think Trench is just a direct upgrade. So I guess they're a little different, but Trench is just a direct upgrade. So we're on Trench. This is just like the bread and butter Riptide chess piece. Sharpshooters are the brand new arm. These are the only arm we have this is the only new equipment we have main board. We do have another piece of equipment inside of the deck, but this is just generally the best one. Compared to Bullseye Bracers, it trades out the 1 Arcane Barrier for a 1 block Battle Worn, which is pretty nice considering Riptide does have less than 40 starting HP. And instead of the +1 counter on the load of Bullseye Bracers, it allows us to put an aim counter on the arrow, which matters for a lot of arrows because a lot of them get a bonus effect if they're loaded with an aim counter. So, pretty nice. Of course, we won't have the utility with something like Bolt and Shot giving +1, but we will get to turn on like Drill Shot. A Falcon Wing can come in for 4, an Infecting Shot gets pumped. Stone Rain, one of the more important ones as well. So this arm does give out a lot of utility with that aim counter. For shoes, we are on Snapdragon Scalar's main board. The reason being is because your arrows will not always have aim counters on them. We are playing the other brand new shoes in the sideboard, but we'll talk about those when we do talk about the sideboard. In general, Snapdragon Scalars are just the more consistent card since it doesn't depend on us having an aim counter on our arrow. And finally, Quiver of the Abyssal Depths. We are not on enough blues to actually want to play Rustling Leaves, so Abyssal Depths just makes the most sense. Looking at our inventory equipment, we have 3 other pieces. Bullseye Bracers is still on the list because 2AB is pretty good. We are a deck that is on mostly reds, but we do have a fair amount of yellows, so 2AB does make a little more sense versus our wizard matchups. We are on Long Draw Half Glove for any matchup that we want this bigger pump, or a matchup that we think is going to play Warmongers because that card kills us. This helps us against Warmongers. And then Flight Path is the slot you would put something like Perch Grapplers. This is sort of the middle ground, where Perch Grapplers give you 2 block in comparison to the Snapdragon Scalars 0 and Go Again. Flight Path gives you a 1 block plus a Go Again that is a little more restrictive, but still a usable Go Again effect with some added defense. You don't get the 2 block to block some important numbers versus something like a Bravo, but when you're fighting any other deck, nothing else really requires you to stop a precise amount of damage unless it's just all of the damage. And generally those decks, Perch Grapplers, won't let you full block anything because they're all going to come in for like 6, and if you need a full block, it'll have like Dominate or something. So you don't really need this. Also, like CNC, those shoes don't do anything. These don't do anything. You just put 2 cards in front. It's about the same. I guess you don't have to put an arrow in front. You could put 2 pumps and the Perch Grapplers in front, but, you know, oh well. Flight Path, I think, is a good middle ground for those strategies, and we're on these instead of the Perch Grapplers. Looking at the main board, I think it's just a little standard for an aggressive Riptide list. The only arrow that we are on more than 3 of is Bolt and Shot, just because we are on Dreadbore. Dreadbore giving it an 8 +1 counter means that Bolt and Shot will allow us to get the Go Again and reload extremely easily. Even the yellow one will be able to come in for 4 with Go Again. In the on-hit reload. So Bolt and Shot, just one of the best cards we could be playing. Lets us load other arrows and fire them off. Only 2 copies of Drill Shot. If we are putting an aim counter on an arrow, this is an okay one. Not the best. Piercing is generally never that good right now, since most equipment can either block over this anyway, or they're just not going to put equipment in front. But the -1 counter into the more armor-focused decks can be pretty good sometimes. Endless Arrow is a card that lets us keep hitting it over and over again. as well as the possibility of just end a turn with this and then put it in our arsenal. So next turn we can just trench it away and just get a free resource, which really is not bad for Riptide since your bow costs 1 and you do tend to play a few more 1-cost arrows than, I guess it's about the same as Azalea, but some of your payment for your arrows is going to be a lot different. So the actual trench itself is pretty nice. And Endless Arrow is just a great card to trench away. We'll go over all of the free arrows. Actually, yeah, I guess we'll go over all the free arrows. Most of them are up here, but we do need to talk about Stone Rain. Falcon Wing is just a 0 for 3 go again. This was played a lot before in Lexi because of Voltaire, allowing you to actually have it come in for 4 at base. But because we can give this an aim counter sometimes, letting it come in for just 4 go again is pretty good. The aim counter won't be something that'll always happen, but for a free go again arrow, this one's just always nice to have. And then the last 0-cost arrow in the main board is Stone Rain. This is a new card from the Azalea Armory deck. It's a 0 for 4 with 3 block, and it has, if this has an aim counter on it, it gets Dominate, and when this hits a hero, they banish face down a card from their hand, and at the beginning of the next end phase, they return it to their hand. So think of this as sort of like an Intimidate, where if you land this on someone, they're going to be down a card. Yes, they get an arsenal, but you're Ranger. You have Seek and Destroy. You have Lace with Inertia. There are ways you can interact with that to stop them from still getting that arsenal. So it just makes your opponent lose any offense. Or if you give this go again, the ability to block your next arrow as well. And since this is Dominate, it can be pretty hard to block. So Stone Rain is a pretty good new addition from the Azalea Armory deck. Moving on to our 1-cost arrows. Heat Seeker lets us load some more arrows. Heat Seeker notably is a card that is extremely good with New Horizon as well. Since Heat Seeker loads the arrow face up, this can let us set up double arsenals. Since the Heat Seeker loads the arrow face up, we don't have to do anything to flip it over, and then we can just arsenal another card. This combination with New Horizon does make it worth it as well. Infecting Shot is just the best of the Pox arrows. Is that the I guess it is. I don't know. I think Pox arrow would makes sense, but I guess you could say disease arrows as well. Just a 1 for 5. Gets +1 if it is an aim counter. I don't think many people know that's there because it really never comes up. But it does give it +1 if you do have an aim counter on it. And if it hits, you get a Blood Rot Pox under that hero's control, which is generally really good right now. Because 2 free damage, not a lot of decks are on a vast amount of blues, and even the ones that are find it a pain to pay for it. So you'll just generally get the extra 2 damage. Remorseless for the aggro matchups because they're going to be playing a lot of cards. They're going to lose a lot of life. This one just makes a ton of sense. As well as if you do load this one, this stops arrows. This stops D-reacts on it from Arsenal, which Dreadbore shuts them off from hand. So you can have just a no D-react attack with the Remorseless, same as like Release the Tension. We'll talk about that soon. And then Sleep Dart at only a 2 of. A lot of decks you want to just shut off their hero ability right now because hero abilities are kind of just like the strongest thing in the game right now. So being able to threaten an on-hit to shut them off is really, really good. Before we talk about any of our pumps and other things, we do have one more attack in this deck, and that is 3 of Ravenous Rabble. Rabble is an attack that can come in for free, let us load an arrow off of Riptide, as well as we are on a mostly red list, which means this can come in for 4 a lot. Sometimes it comes in for 3. We're on 3 blues, so hopefully it doesn't come in for 2. But even if we do hit a yellow off the top, a 0 for 3 really isn't that bad, especially when you consider it is loading us a card off of our Riptide ability. Next, let's take a look at the pumps. This is sort of the other thing that Ranger's doing that's really, really strong. Lace with Blood Rot / Blood Root. If you bought the Armory deck, gives your next arrow +3 and an on-hit of the Blood Rot Pox. Just a really strong increased damage tool. It's 3 at base +2 if hits. So this one is just, you can't really play without it. It's just a 5 damage pump. Lace with Frailty is really good into a very aggressive meta, as well as things like Ranger Mirrors. Frailty tokens can just be so annoying for so many decks versus Enigma. All of their shields are weapons. You won't stop them from having go again because Enigma checks for the counters, but you will just decrease the damage that they're doing to you. As well as some ninja matchups. Katsu, even though he's not very good, is going to be on Kodachis. Fi sometimes brings Kodachis. I don't think they're going to be bringing that into Riptide. They might be on Emberblade. And even into Zen, you can stop their arsenal, or you can prevent their arsenal attack by 1, and even make their weapon only come in for 1. So Lace with Frailty does have some upside versus those matchups as well. And then only 2 Lace with Inertia, because Inertia tokens are generally just always worse than triggering a Seek and Destroy. But they do have their use having extra of those effects, stopping your opponent from setting up. So 2 Lace with Inertia is pretty important. 3 Pre-Med. This card is just broken. This card is insane in Riptide. It's insane in every Ranger, but this just lets you get a Ponder, which lets you be so much more aggressive, as well as giving you a pump for 3 for your next attack you play from your arsenal, which your Ranger, every attack is played from your arsenal. And then Release Attention, similar to Remorseless, stops arrows played from Arsenal, this chain link, which really interacts well with our bow, stopping all D-reacts, making it so your opponent has to put real aggressive cards to stop your attacks if they want to stop any of your hit effects, which is really good. And then Seek and Destroy, because this is just the best pump in the game. It's Lace with Inertia, but they discard and destroy all the cards instead of just going to the bottom for the pitch deck. It's just insanely strong how good it's insanely crazy how good Seek and Destroy is, because when you put cards to the bottom, you can always draw them later, especially if it's like against Mystic. Yeah, so what? They might have drawn a Chi. They put it to the bottom, sure. But when it's Seek and Destroy, they might lose their Chi if they can't use it, which, Zen can easily use it, but Enigma sometimes can be trapped with Chi in her hand if you prevent her from doing anything late game, so you could take some Chi out, which could be good, could be bad for you. Same thing as New, sometimes you do get a Transcend card / Chi from them, which is pretty nice. So Seek and Destroy, really good card in those matchups, as well as just any matchup. Again, it's same as Lace with Inertia, stops them from setting up. Moving on, we have 3 other yellows in the deck than the Bolt and Shot. Codex of Frailty. I don't need to explain this card. This card is just broken. Every deck that can play Codex of Frailty will play Codex of Frailty, because this card is just so broken. If you have a resource remaining, you can get a Remorseless back, you can get a Sleep Dart back, you can get a Heat Seeker back and set up your double arsenal, even Infecting Shot for more damage. They have armor, you can get Drill Shot. I wouldn't get anything else, but any of your 1-cost arrows, or like Drill Shot or Endless Arrow to poke at armor. Codex just lets you do. It's insanely strong, makes them discard a card if they have to get a card back, and then you can interact with them. If you've Seek and Destroyed, it gives them a Frailty, so the card they do arsenal is going to do less damage, and you get a Ponder, so it just replaces its own arsenal next turn. Even if you end up just sinking that card to the bottom with Trench, it's still incredibly strong. Rain Razors is a 0-cost instant, gives +2 to all your arrows this turn. Riptide's a deck that can go pretty wide. This, played from hand, loads your Riptide, so it can let you get 2 to 3 arrow turns, which is a pretty big pump, really nice. It's as well as the only reaction that Ranger realistically gets access to, so Rain Razors is really, really good. And then the other new card from the Azalea Armory deck, Line It Up. It should have just been a Riptide Armory deck. Line It Up feels so much like a Riptide card, it's insane. This is a 1-cost yellow action. It actually blocks 3. Ranger actions normally don't do that. This one does. It gives your next arrow this turn +3, but it also lets you turn a face-down arrow in your arsenal face up to give it an aim counter. Something that, if you use your Azalea headpiece, you wouldn't have a face-down arrow in your arsenal. and who also doesn't need to put aim counters on her arrows because of Crow's Nest. This is just a Riptide card. This card's great. Riptide does allow you to load a card prior to this card's resolution, which means if you had a turn like trench something, play a line it up into like a Stone Rain, you can Stone Rain for 7 plus the effect, which is really good. You can also maybe get another pump in there, have it come in for 10 Dominate, Stone Rain Disruption, plus whatever else, either a Seek and Destroy, a Lace, whatever have you. This card just incredibly strong. If you're playing Riptide, you're definitely playing this card, 100%. Even if you only turn a card like a Drill, again, Drill Shot has the worst on hit in the deck, or the worst aim counter pump in the deck. Even if you're just turning on a Drill Shot, so what? +1 piercing's fine. It's still an arrow coming in for 7, threatening their armor. Even if you put it on a Falcon Wing, you pretty much are just playing a 1 for 7 go again. And the Infecting Shot becomes a 1 for 9, or I guess a 2 for 9, which is really, really good. Especially with the on-hit of the Infecting Shot. And then the last 3 cards in the main board are just Riptide's 3 spec traps. We're not on any of his other specs. Intoxicating Shot is an okay card, but since we're being a little more aggressive, not on so many traps, the tokens that you're giving to your opponent can kind of hurt you. And we're not on... I forget what his newer spec is called, because we're just not on that many traps. We are on Battering Bolt as a popper, but not so much on Murky Water. That's it. We're not on very many traps. If we're on any traps, they're all on the sideboard. We're not bringing in Murky Water just for that. But there are definitely some trap-based lists. But looking at all the traps, they're all pretty big. I've went over Riptide a bunch. Buzzsaw Trap sets an attack back to its base. Collapsing Trap, really, really good in this format. Making aggro decks lose their whole hand, and then getting a random hand off the top's great. Messes up pitch decks too. This card's insane. And there aren't very many reactions this format. Yes, New exists and Azuri exists. The Spike Pit Trap can sometimes do a lot of damage, but you know, that's really about it for the Spike Pit Trap. It's the worst one of the 3, but I think it's worth it to play because it does have that upside into those decks sometimes. Finally, let's talk about the rest of the inventory. A lot of it you can bring in versus Illusionist, which Illusionist is a pretty bad matchup, if I'm going to be honest, because you don't really have very many poppers in it. A lot of your cards block too. It's just pretty bad. So a lot of these do help you in that Ranger matchup, or sorry, in that Illusionist matchup, but they all also have some pretty nice utility other than that. Battering Bolt is just a pretty good popper. It's a 2 for 6 that takes all non-action cards out of their hand, either it be instants, reactions. I don't know why they wouldn't play. I guess since your Dreadbore stopping their defense reactions, it could prevent them from putting those in front of the Battering Bolt, as well as it takes instants away. All of their auras are just gone if you do throw it, but even if you don't throw it, it pops Heralds. It pops whatever Phantasm attacks Enigma's throwing. If you're bringing in versus them, I pretty much only would, unless Askelio becomes a problem, in which this card might be good into Askelio, forcing him to just play everything right away. Frailty Traps card, pretty good versus aggro. Anything that a Frailty token would do really good against, this will be good into. Decks like Assassin, this can shut off daggers. Decks like Ninja, this can really hurt their weapons. Anything else that uses a weapon, Frailty Traps pretty good against. As well as if you ever trigger your traps, they do get an extra 1 value because of the Riptide's other effect. Also, very good into, again, Illusionist. If they swing at you with a Herald and they do not have a Spectral Shield, Riptide's ability, I believe, actually, do not play traps on Heralds, or do not play traps on Angels. If they swing at you with a Herald, my mistake, if they swing at you with a Herald and you Frailty Trap it, then if they don't have a Spectral Shield, they will lose their Angel. Same as Tar Pit Trap, as well as Tar Pit Trap will stop their Herald going to Soul. So you won't have to pop it. You can just Tar Pit, doesn't move to Soul, do 1 to you. If you have an Angel, it dies. Unless they have a Spectral Shield. Oh well. And then finally, the last card is Mark Minor Grapnel, because this one also is really good versus Ward. It's just can't be prevented. If it has a name counter, it gets +1, so it's a 0 for 5. That's just pretty strong. Only 2 of it because you don't need 3 of it, really. So everything's pretty good into the Illusionist matchup. But of course, these are just pretty good in other matchups too. Tar Pit Trap is good into other decks that have a lot of hit effects. Possibly Ranger Mirrors. They have a lot of disruptive on-hit effects. New as well has a lot of on-hit effects. So Tar Pit Trap, if they do like hiss something with the Go Again, or use their shoes, or something like that, where their dagger, their Beckoning Mistblade, Tar Pit Trap can just shut off the hit effect, so you can get by with no disruption. And then again, Frailty Trap, good against decks that play a lot of things from Arsenal Ranger matchups, as well as other aggro decks, because Frailty can hurt weapons, can hurt Arsenal attacks. So with all that, that's going to be the end of the video. Riptide definitely got a lot of support from the Azalea Armory deck. I understand why it was Azalea. I think Azalea is definitely a lot more popular than Riptide, but I think Riptide players are definitely eating good with the new cards from the Azalea Armory deck. I think we're getting one more around the release of the next set, Rosetta, and one after. We know that the one after is going to be I think they said new hero. So my hope is that we get an Icelander Armory deck with a brand new Icelander. If we do, that week, I promise you, they're going to announce it on a Friday, and I upload on Thursdays, because that's exactly what happens with everything else. That's just because I upload on Thursday. But I'm telling you, if they announce it's an Icelander deck, week 1, there's going to be an Icelander video, because that is just my favorite hero, all of Flesh and Blood. I just hope she comes back, because honestly, I really miss Frostbite. I think a lot of people really miss Frostbite. It's like that meme from Invincible where Omni-Man says, "I think I miss my wife. I think I miss Frostbite." Which is also a meme, because I definitely posted that in a Discord. I was not the original poster, but I posted that in the Discord server my locals use, because I stole it. But that meme is, I'll probably put it in the video. That's how I feel right now. But with all that, again, that's going to be the end of the video. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you all maybe learned something. If any of you want to try out this deck, the link will be in the description, same as every other deck. I have not been updating my February profile. Sorry, but if you want a deck list, they're all linked in the description of the video that the deck list is for. I might go back like one day that I'm bored and I'll just make everything open and I'll link everything like I did before. But for now, they're all linked on the video. Just they're still privated, but you can see them if you have the link. But again, I might change that in the future. Not sure what we'll do next week. We won't have spoiler season, I believe. I'm sorry, I thought skirmish season was way closer than it was. So maybe we do another skirmish video. Maybe Zen, because Zen's just broken. But, oh well. Next week, we'll probably look at some other constructed deck. Maybe I'll do Bolton, since I did KO last week, and we did Riptide this week, because of the new cards. I didn't do a video for Bolton on Bolton's new cards from his Armory deck, so either we'll do a skirmish video, or we will take a look at a Bolton deck list updated with the new cards. But with all that, I've been rambling too long. I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.